The anime begins by telling us about an ancient world where, many years ago, demons known as Oni existed. They were so cruel that they destroyed everything that came in their path, whether places or people. However, wherever darkness exists, light eventually follows. Because of this, certain humans rose to confront these demons, and those who defeated the Oni came to be known as Mamataro, protectors of the world who stood against destruction. The story then shifts to the present, where we meet the protagonist, Shiki, who is talking to a friend on the phone and explaining that he has been expelled from school. Shiki is shown to have a strong fascination with weapons, clearly reflected in the collection kept inside his room. Soon after, his father Tetsuyoshi arrives home, visibly angry due to Shiki's expulsion. It is revealed that Tetsuyoshi owns a liquor store. Not long after, he receives an urgent delivery call and immediately leaves the house. While Shiki remains alone in his room, mysterious particles suddenly appear and pull him out onto the street. A strange man appears in front of him and asks for his name, but before anything can happen, Tetsuyoshi arrives in a car and runs the man over. He quickly tells Shiki to get into the car, and they speed away. Nervous and confused, Shiki asks if his father borrowed money from dangerous people, but Tetsuyoshi instead tells him that they must move abroad. He then reveals a shocking truth: Shiki carries Oni blood, while the man they struck possesses Mamataro blood. Suddenly, the same magical particles surround the car, forcing Tetsuyoshi to stop near a factory. The vehicle explodes, and amid the chaos, Shiki disappears. He is shown bound by the particles, facing the same man, who introduces himself as Samidare. Samidare explains that because Shiki has Oni blood, he must be exterminated, as Oni are considered a plague to the world. Samidare attacks Tetsuyoshi with a sword, but Tetsuyoshi summons one of his own and blocks the strike. At this moment, Shiki learns that his father was once a member of the Mamataro agency, a revelation that deeply shocks him. Samidare declares that even as a former member, hiding an Oni means Tetsuyoshi will share the same fate as his son. A fierce battle begins, with both fighters displaying nearly equal skill. Samidare questions why Tetsuyoshi protects an Oni, knowing how destructive they are, but Tetsuyoshi refuses to answer. During the fight, Tetsuyoshi attempts an attack, but Samidare dodges and delivers a deep slash to his chest. Tetsuyoshi collapses, bleeding heavily, as Samidare moves to finish Shiki. Seeing this, Shiki's rage finally erupts. As Samidare advances, Tetsuyoshi uses his last strength to grab his opponent's leg. When Samidare demands to know why he protects Shiki, Tetsuyoshi answers honestly because he loves his son, and killing a child simply for his blood is wrong. Samidare remains unmoved and begins forming a sword from magical particles. Overwhelmed with fury, Shiki's Oni blood takes control. He transforms, breaks free from his restraints, and launches an attack on Samidare. Although Samidare barely escapes, Shiki now appears fully demonic. Realizing Shiki's true power has awakened, Samidare grows uneasy. Their battle intensifies, and although Samidare severs one of Shiki's limbs, it regenerates instantly through demonic power. Samidare reflects that Oni are killed because of their frenzy state, in which they lose control completely. Shiki then summons numerous weapons using demon magic and fires at him. Samidare attempts to flee but lowers his guard while counterattacking and is struck by a powerful blow. Shiki prepares a final attack, but Samidare narrowly escapes. Afterward, Shiki reverts to normal, left confused, as Oni cannot remember what happens during frenzy. Taking advantage of this moment, Samidare approaches to kill Shiki, but Tetsuyoshi steps in and takes the fatal strike to his chest. Noticing people approaching the area, Samidare retreats. With his remaining strength, Tetsuyoshi tells Shiki to fight for his dreams and becomes strong enough that no Mamataro can ever defeat him. Shiki tries desperately to save him, but Tetsuyoshi collapses, and Shiki realizes his father has died. In his grief, Shiki lowers his guard, and a man on roller skates suddenly appears, knocking him unconscious in a single blow. His name is Nato. In a parallel scene, several figures dressed like mummies discuss that Shiki must be eliminated before his true demon form fully awakens. The episode ends with a scene of Shiki as a child with his father, where Samidare kills him only for it to be revealed as a nightmare. Shiki awakens bound, with Nato beside him. Nato reveals that he too is an Oni, and that the reason he brought Shiki here is simple: to evaluate him. Nato then calmly explains that just like the Mamataro agency exists to eliminate Oni, there is also an Oni agency created to fight back against them. This agency exists to protect Oni who have awakened their powers, and Nato's role is to recruit such individuals, those who, like Shiki, have begun to awaken their true strength. However, despite Nato repeatedly stating that Shiki is only undergoing an evaluation, Shiki grows increasingly irritated. Believing that angered people only understand things through force, Nato suddenly takes a rope and begins strangling him. him. Shiki struggles but eventually loses consciousness. Nato then deliberately wounds him, and as Shiki's blood falls to the ground, his frenzy state activates once again. In this state, Shiki attacks Nato, but it quickly becomes clear that Nato is far more skilled and experienced. Within moments, Nato knocks Shiki unconscious, forcing him back into a normal state. Nato explains that unlike Shiki, he can control Oni blood through sheer will without falling into frenzy. Seeing how overwhelmingly strong Nato is, Shiki kneels and asks to become his subordinate, desperate to gain power so he can avenge his father. Nato refuses, bluntly stating that Shiki is too emotionally unstable and unfit to join his organization. When Nato slightly cuts his own finger and freely manipulates Oni blood, Shiki charges toward him in frustration. Nato forms a protective barrier, but Shiki leaps forward and instinctively manipulates his blood, creating a powerful cannon from his arms. Nato blocks the attack and dismisses it as mere luck, warning that Shiki is once again close to losing control. Shiki denies this and manages to calm himself, surprising Nato by regaining control so quickly. Shiki admits he knows nothing about Oni and only copied what he had seen earlier. Nato does not believe him, instead thinking Shiki may be the most incompetent Oni he has ever encountered. As Nato reflects on this, Shiki imagines beating him senseless but restrains himself, knowing that losing control would trigger frenzy. Shiki begs Nato to teach him everything so he can become useful and avenge his father, but Nato refuses again, stating that Oni cannot recklessly expose their identities. Suddenly, Nato summons his spear and pins Shiki to the ground. He then announces that Shiki will become his student after all, having finally seen his potential. Shiki is left confused, realizing he has somehow passed Nato's test. Nato explains that they are on a remote island known as the Gates of Hell, where the Oni school Resetsu Academy is located. The academy is heavily militarized and specialized in fighting Mamataro. Nato declares himself Shiki's tutor. Motivated, Shiki eagerly agrees to attend, determined to grow stronger and avenge his father. Later, Nato waits outside Shiki's new dormitory on the island. Shiki is startled to see he has grown horns, and Nato explains this happened because his Oni powers have awakened. They rush toward class, with Nato warning Shiki to run or risk expulsion. Upon arrival, Shiki wonders if he should break the door, remembering his rebellious past. Instead, Nato kicks the door open, injures himself, and asks another student for a handkerchief. This student introduces himself as Jean. Shiki mocks Jean, believing he has not awakened his powers, but Jean reveals his horns and states that those who cannot hide them are truly weak. Another student, Ikari, takes offense, escalating tensions. Quina encourages fighting, while Juji urges order and shows kindness toward Shiki. A shy girl named Mare apologizes for not having a handkerchief, and a gloomy student named Rokuro appears indifferent to everything. Noticing tension between Jean and Shiki, Nato seats them together to encourage cooperation. He initially offers to give a tour of the academy but changes plans and takes them into the forest instead. He tells them they must hide for an hour without being found or face expulsion. Jean asks what happens if they enter frenzy and kill Nato, to which Nato calmly replies that doing so would earn them immediate graduation. Nato throws only 2 target balls into the forest and divides the class into 3 groups. Mare is paired with Shiki, Ikari with Juji, and Quina with Rokuro. Shiki protests being grouped near Jean, but Mare apologizes gently, hoping not to be a burden. Shiki, flustered by female attention, boldly promises to protect her. When Mare speaks to Jean and is ignored, she begins to cry, and Shiki comforts her, angering Jean further. The group enters the forest, where Jean removes his mask to reveal scars and attacks Shiki by cutting his arm and summoning rotating blades. Shiki grows nervous, realizing how easily Jean fights. He admits he joined the academy to avenge his father, which causes Jin's attitude to shift completely as the two prepare to fight. Elsewhere, Mare feels useless due to her fear and unknowingly stands near one of the target balls. Back in the fight, Shiki struggles to control his blood and is struck by Jean. Jean mocks him for fighting without using Oni blood, leaving Shiki frustrated and confused. As Jean prepares another attack, Mare suddenly intervenes, causing a massive explosion. Shiki narrowly saves her, and Mare angrily confronts Jean for nearly killing her. Overwhelmed, Mare begins crying uncontrollably as her Oni blood spills out, forming a gigantic monstrous shape. She warns them to run before the creature kills them. Meanwhile, Nato watches from a tree when a mysterious figure arrives, the academy's director, who remarks that many Oni die simply because of their blood, often used as experiments. The scene returns to the forest, where Jean fights the monster but realizes he cannot defeat it. Shiki grows deeply worried about Mare, realizing that her emotional distress is what causes her Oni blood to spiral out of control. At this moment, the monster releases a massive pool of blood toward both of them. The protagonist urges the girl to try to regain control, but it becomes clear that the creature has developed its own consciousness. Realizing the danger, Mare tells both of them to run. From a distance, Nato observes the scene and calmly notes that this monster is the manifestation of Mare's blood eclipse, wondering how they will resolve such a situation. Soon after, the instructor arrives and remarks that once again, the protagonist was fortunate to transform first. Overwhelmed by despair, the protagonist breaks down in tears, unable to accept how powerless he feels, especially when he believes he cannot even avenge his father. At that moment, Jean arrives and cuts his own arm to summon his rotating blades. Watching closely, Nato recognizes this as a highly advanced technique, one that requires great precision and control. Jean launches an attack against the beast, and during the chaos, the protagonist recalls his deep love for weapons and his experience as a collector. In that instant, he finally understands how Oni power truly works. Just as Jean begins to struggle, the protagonist suddenly appears wielding an enormous weapon. He dodges the monster's attack and destroys it with a single shot, shocking both Jean and Nato. After the attack, Mare collapses, and the protagonist rushes toward her, but he too falls. Nato explains that this is due to extreme exhaustion caused by firing such a dense concentration of Oni blood. Though on the brink of death from blood loss, the protagonist remains worried only about the girl. Suddenly, Jean attacks Nato from behind, but Nato effortlessly blocks him. Jean confidently asks whether defeating him would allow him to join any Oni unit, and Nato calmly agrees. Jean prepares his blades while Nato promises not to use Oni blood in the fight. As Jean charges forward, Nato blocks him and releases a thick mist to disorient him. Jean is struck in the arm and retreats, realizing that Nato's umbrella is also a weapon. When Jean attacks again, another smoke screen appears, and just as Jean assumes a long-range strike is coming, Nato lands a powerful blow, knocking him to the ground. Nato traps him with the umbrella and reveals that he knows Jean wants to defeat him in order to meet his father, information uncovered through investigation. Nato then reveals the devastating truth: Jin's father is a Momotaro, and the same man slaughtered Jin's family. This revelation fills Jean with rage and renewed determination to join an Oni unit so he can one day kill his father. As Jean struggles to stand, Nato knocks him down again, telling him that he should not die for his goals, but live in order to achieve them. Shortly afterward, Nato calls an ambulance to treat Mare and has Jean restrained. Turning to the protagonist, Nato explains that he now has two choices. Since one of the target balls has already been found, he must either steal it or locate the second one. The protagonist immediately runs off, with Nato following close behind. Bursting out of the bushes, the protagonist asks Jean to cooperate so they can win the trial together, as time is running out. After some hesitation, Jean agrees. They set a trap, using the protagonist as bait. When Nato approaches, Jean drops from a tree using a rope, successfully restraining him. The protagonist snatches the ball from Nato's hand. With less than 3 minutes remaining, Nato realizes that if Jean takes the ball and runs, he will eventually lose it during a fight with the protagonist. Instead, the protagonist joyfully urges Jean to run at full speed. However, he is stunned when Nato declares that if Jean crosses the line alone, he will be eliminated. As Jean runs, he realizes how much the protagonist has done for him and turns back, feeling indebted. Suddenly, a creature named Muku appears with a communicator. Through it, they hear an urgent request for reinforcements. The Momotaro are attacking Kyoto. Everyone immediately regroups, instructed to head to Kyoto while protecting Mare, who is still weak. After some time, they board a boat, and the protagonist successfully hides his horns at last. Ikari mocks him for being the slowest to do so, nearly starting a fight, but Nato intervenes. Nato explains that although they are heading to Kyoto, the students will not fight on the front lines. Instead, they will perform support tasks. This angers Ikari, who wants real combat experience, but Nato apologizes, stating he will not place them in danger. The students wear school uniforms to blend into the city. Nato further explains that Oni divisions are split between combat units and support units, and they belong to support. Hours later, they arrive in Kyoto and enter a restaurant run by an elderly woman, which is revealed to be the city's Oni base. In a parallel scene, a Momotaro named Tetsubakiri and his partner Yomogi slaughter several Oni. Tetsubakiri remarks that Oni girls are particularly valuable as experimental subjects. With them is a grotesque creature named Ugly, which feeds on Oni corpses. Tetsubakiri reveals his obsession with studying Oni blood, believing it could allow artificial regeneration of human body parts. Nearby, a child hides in fear, but Tetsubakiri discovers him, brutally beats him, merges corpses with his body using particle manipulation, and orders Ugly to devour them. Back with the protagonist's group, they reach the Kyoto support base and meet Kyoya, the city's support commander and Nato's close friend. Nato quickly leaves for the front lines, disappointing the students who wanted to fight. The group is taken to treat the wounded, and the protagonist is shocked by their injuries. Kyoya reassures them and demonstrates his support role by healing a severely injured Oni whose limbs were severed. Kyoya cuts himself and feeds the man his blood, explaining that although he lacks combat strength, his blood greatly enhances regeneration. Within moments, the man regrows his arm and heals his chest wounds, breaking down in tears at the thought of hugging his child again. Kyoya explains that he cannot heal further without risking antibody rejection and lectures the students on the vital importance of support roles. This deeply changes their perspective. The protagonist enthusiastically promises to help however he can. Kyoya then assigns him a special mission to look after a young girl named Mei, who was brought in the previous day and whose parents are still missing. When the protagonist approaches Mei, she barely speaks, but reacts when he mentions a temple. Moments later, recovered bodies arrive, ones saved by the support team. Among them, Mei recognizes her parents. She breaks down in tears, while Kyoya quietly admits that he may never become used to witnessing such suffering. Nato and the others stay alert, ready to fight Tetsubakiri. Tetsubakiri tells them that he has left a gift all over the city. He explains that he spread the bodies of Oni across the city and used his power on them so he can track everyone. These bodies are the same ones that are now being brought into the base. Hearing this, the teacher is left speechless. Back at the base, the protagonist is in a room with the girl and her parents. While they are talking, Tetsubakiri suddenly starts controlling the girl's father's body. At first, the girl feels happy seeing her father move, but they quickly realize something is wrong. The controlled body begins to choke Mei, so without hesitation, they stop him. Kyoya explains that this is Tetsubakiri's doing and says the only way to stop this power is to destroy the brain. This makes the protagonist very angry, and Kyoya soon realizes that all the other bodies are the same. Soon, the protagonist and Kyoya are attacked by all the bodies inside the base. At the same time, the rest of the group and the injured people are also attacked. It looks like a group of zombies attacking everything around them. The protagonist takes out weapons that Nato gave him for emergencies. These weapons use the protagonist's own blood as bullets, making them much stronger. The protagonist is forced to shoot the girl's mother and the other zombie bodies to protect Kyoya. Kyoya tells him that he will take the injured people to a safer place and asks the protagonist to cover him. The group fights back and learns that the only way to stop the bodies is to attack the head. They start defeating many of them, but the protagonist feels terrible, knowing they are killing these people a second time. He thinks about how all of them may have had families and becomes angry, believing that a Momotaro must be behind all this. Elsewhere, Nato and Tetsubakiri face each other. Nato attacks, but Tetsubakiri blocks him using dead bodies. Nato barely avoids an attack from Ugly. Nato tells his teammates to return to the base, but Yomogi appears and traps everyone, including Nato, inside a cube. She explains that they can only escape if she allows it. Tetsubakiri says he has found everyone's location at the temple. Ugly enters the cube, and before leaving, they activate a power that causes a huge explosion, badly injuring Nato. Back at the base, the protagonist's group manages to defeat all the monsters. They see Mei staring at her parents' bodies. Kyoya comforts her, but she calmly says she has always lived alone and was prepared for this day. She smiles and tells the protagonist not to worry about her. The protagonist feels deep guilt because he was the one who ended her parents' lives again. He remembers how, as a child, he dreamed of becoming a hero who would bring justice. But now he believes the Momotaro, who were supposed to protect people, have only caused more deaths. As he hugs the girl, he decides that if these heroes are truly the villains, then he will become the one who stops them. Later, Kyoya and Jean walk through the base, saying there will be a ceremony for those who died. Meanwhile, the students arrange the bodies. Jean worries that if the Oni base can be attacked, then nowhere is truly safe. He uses his blood eclipse ability, cutting his finger slightly and sensing everyone within 5 kilometers. He can even tell who is Oni and who is Momotaro. Suddenly, he feels a strange presence. At the same time, Tetsubakiri arrives at the restaurant and orders more ugly monsters. They have already defeated the old woman there and found the entrance to the base. Yomogi suggests using poisonous gas to kill everyone inside, but Tetsubakiri refuses. He says he wants to go in directly because he received a message about a very powerful Oni. He says that before killing anyone, he will ask their name because he wants to capture one Oni alive for research, the protagonist, who has something special about him. After saying this, they begin walking down the stairs. So friends, this part ends here. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to press the bell icon so you never miss an update. The next part is coming very soon, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching.